Welcome, wandering souls and lost sailors, to the Ship of the Dead podcast.
Aye, mateys, welcome aboard the Ship of the Dead. I'm your host, Luke, also known as the Pirate Wizard Limithron. Today I have two very special guests, Petrus and Adam from Archon Games. How's it going, guys?
It's going great.
It's awesome. It's good to be here.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
This is a long time in the making, I think. We met serendipitously at Origins last year.
1 year ago.
1 year ago, almost to the day.
Yes.
It was love at first dice roll, if you will. Your primary product at the moment, or at least up till now, was a board game or board games. But they're like so on brand with the kind of stuff that I'm into that it was just like, dude, what? How have I not heard of this before? Can you tell us about the origin of Archon Games and your two flagship products?
Yeah. I moved out to Colorado 2013. I had been making board in-card games for a little while, but Petrus and I had been friends forever. And we had some ideas for something thematically that we've been interested in doing for a long time.
Wait. So when you say like elementary school forever, or
Freshman year high school, we got in a battle against a friend. He was claiming that the USS Enterprise could take down a Star Destroyer, and I was fighting. Adam came in and backed me.
Oh
and
yeah,
so
no, the Star Destroyer.
instant alliance. So we knew where priorities lie, and
so you're a fast friends.
Yeah.
And you've got some ideas.
Yeah, so we were playing deck building games. We'd long since, been role playing, doing all kinds of gaming stuff together. And we really wanted to make a dark fantasy game.
Yeah.
And we thought, what better than to do an apocalyptic deck builder?
Yeah.
Like, let's have something where you can be the bad guys.
Yeah.
And you can try to end the world.
And you did that. I mean, this is where looking at the map for it here. I have a copy over here. Eschaton, yes?
Yes, Eschaton. It's an old word that means the final days before the end of the world.
Yes. And give us like the elevator pitch for the actual like mechanics of the game.
It is a strategy deck building game. You're a cult leader and the world is about to end. So your goal is to earn the favor of the Dark One. You're trying to conquer territories, collect relics, summon fiends, do everything that you can to prove that yours is the one worthy cult to survive Armageddon.
I mean, and it plays out like it just like that, For those who aren't familiar with the game, it's a deck builder, but it has this kind of like, I always describe it as Risk-esque if you don't really know board games, but it's got the map element, which is not in every deck builder.
Yeah, we wanted to give people a sense of place. I feel like that's one of the hardest parts of deck builders in my mind, or at least board games in general, is I really want there to be a narrative.
Yeah.
And I feel like a map helps that so much. You really have a sense of where you are in the world.
Yeah, just like when you're reading a book, it's like if you open it up and there's a map, you're like, okay, this is a book for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think the map alone immediately draws you in. I mean, especially for me, I was like, wait, what? This is a deck builder? This is not I was expecting, what's the super popular one?
Dominion is like the
Dominion,
origin.
yeah. And I was like, yeah, that game's, but this one is like the combination of you're a bad guy or you're working for the bad guys and it's going to end. And, at the time and still very into Morkborg, very into the dark fantasy, but B specifically the world is ending dark fantasy and you can't stop it. And your game is like, hey, you got to ride that journey and enjoy it and see whoever's the most powerful. I just think it worked out really well. So
thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
So that went to Kickstarter?
Yeah, it was.
Well, hold on, we're skipping some steps. You had this idea and you made it? Is just like that?
That's kind of more or less. We went through rules, mechanics that we thought were exciting, things that we thought were strong about those mechanics, and things that we thought in other games that utilized them weren't the best. And we tried to streamline that, combining something, from deck building that made it a little more interactive with the map and everything. And then we kind of just went along to make some prototypes, tested it. We were going to continue on the handmade tradition that we roll on a lot of times, and we're handmade a few copies thinking, oh, we'll sell 25 of these. But ultimately, it ended up being quite people are excited about it.
Wait, do you still have those handmade ones?
No, they're all gone. So I mean, this is kind of the weird origin story of this, is that we kind of come from nowhere. When we started, even back in the day when I had my other game company, we were hand making all of the game components. It was screen printed boxes, screen printed maps, just like this. We print all the stuff ourselves. And we'd find some local printer to print rule books, or we'd find someone who could print a deck of cards. And it was never, the hope was that it would go somewhere, but we never could anticipate what that would ever look like. So, I mean, before that, I think the highest grossing Kickstarter we did was like maybe like $1,000 for a storytelling card game.
Yeah.
That we did
with your other company.
Yeah, it was with the other company. That game was called Shindig Machine, which is also still pretty cool, but very sold out at this point.
And out of print.
Yeah. So this, we had been exhibiting at Gen Con since 2010. We brought the game handmade. It was just cardboard boxes that we had hand wrapped with paper, and I had made a custom stamp to put like the artwork on the top of it. We had fabric bags to hold all the different components, and we had maybe like 25, 30 copies of it at the booth. And we're like, well, let's see how this goes. We've got the Kickstarter online. Maybe this will work out.
Right.
And they were like prototypes, handmade prototypes for the real game.
Well, that was just what
the real game was. We were like, we're going to make this. We'll sell maybe a couple
we'll sell 100 and we'll make them all, and it'll take a year to make them. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you sell them all at Gen Con?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like day one. They were just gone. We were like, what just happened? Yeah. Like, this had never really occurred before. So it was this exciting, crazy moment where suddenly the Kickstarter blew up to a point where I was like, oh, we can't just hand make the copies for the Kickstarter. Right. We have to take this to.
It is impossible.
It has to be manufactured.
It has to be manufactured.
Yeah. Not to go into like game business territory, but how was that process? Like finding people to make it? Like, did you have any resources for that?
Only a little bit, because I had done some for the previous game company. Okay. So, a lot of it is just like sort of outsider knowledge of just like trying to be on Board Game Geek and ask questions and see where things are. But, I scoured, I tried to find who could do like, what I assumed would be like the minimum quantity that I could print, because I was afraid that we wouldn't be able to sell everything. That was always just like the concern for it. So it was a lot of just talking to manufacturers overseas and just trying to see what their capabilities were. It's so weird. You have to learn so many strange like terminologies. You're like, oh yeah, grams per square meter in terms of card stock, and do the cards have an aqueous coating, and spot gloss for the box,
or like what's the MOQ or whatever. You're like, what are all these terms? Minimum order quantity.
Weird little things like that you just have to pick up because you just want to make a game, right? I mean, I want to make this thing, but also there's about 1,000 questions to answer,
and you're afraid to ask them sometimes. Like, who can you ask?
Yeah, and who do you ask? That's the biggest thing.
Well, for me, it's been great knowing you guys, because every time I have a question, I just ask you guys.
Right.
If it's one that's like not like, I need to know like, where do I get a convention booth? So,
right.
So thank you for all the.
Of course. I mean, happy to share that knowledge.
So with Eschaton, like I think that you've got the map, but I think that there's a lore in this game.
Oh yeah.
And it almost doesn't even exist in the game. It's like in the ether, maybe like in your guys' minds. And I know every time I talk to you guys at conventions, like you can lore dump to me. Was it the chicken or the egg? Like how much is it? Is it a tandem thing where you've got world building happening before the game got made, or you've like added on as the expansions come?
I think mostly it's, because it was a pursuit of making a game at first. We have all these things inspire us. We have ideas that have been ruminating in our heads and everything, but developing the game really gave us an outlet to further develop those ideas. Yeah. So, it's kind of an esoteric idea until it has a conduit through which to ground in a way. And Eschaton definitely gives a lot of those ideas as far as mythology and worldcraft that, can all convalesce and turn into something. So as we move past Eschaton, everything starts to make more and more sense as far as the storytelling behind it. And so, in our heads, there's a wide breadth of things that take place in this world that you just scratch the surface on when you play Eschaton.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're booted up like old school Warcraft.
Right.
And then like you made the game, but then like you guys are like unveiling the fog of war to yourselves.
Right.
Like, oh, what's in this place? Like, well, I guess we have to come up with stuff for that. Yeah.
And it's super fun in that way because it's very organic because, the world exists. We know how things work in the world. And then from there, there's bigger forces at play that, of course, we have all the understanding of. And then for adventurers that are coming in, whether through Eschaton or the role-playing modules, now they get to scratch the surface and kind of experience it as someone just entering it as a nobody, really.
Yeah, sure. I remember my brother and I used to be really big into the Star Wars trading card game. We played the collectible card game as well. But when the trading card game came out, Wizards of the Coast would do these like design blog entries. And they talk about making cards that were top down. Right. And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. But like their explanation of top down was that we making the mechanics for this card based on the story. And I feel like you started bottom up or whatever the opposite is, but now you've got like, okay, well, there's a certain cult, like, you got this expansion coming out on Kickstarter.
Right.
And isn't this where there's like a cult coming and like all of a sudden everybody can team up? Like that's a top down design, right?
Yeah. So while the occultists do want to see the Dark One return and, bring Eschaton and see Armageddon and all that, there is a force in the world that very much does not want that to happen. And so regardless of what cult you align to, you have this opposition. We call it the Inquisition.
I was going to say, it's like the Inquisition.
Right. Yeah. They're marching to try to, stamp out the cults and stop their intentions from manifesting.
That's a very top down, like you come up with the story idea and then you're like, oh, how do we implement this? Or was it the other way? Like we want to make it co-op?
No, and that's even with Eschaton, I think a lot of the aspects, and Nexus Infernum, is it's like Adam said, we wanted a game about raising cults. And it, ultimately was like, not that the mechanism was obvious at first, but we're like, what gameplay elements can you use to build a cult?
Yeah.
We're like, well, you're going to need to build an empire and you're going to need to build a cult somehow. So deck building, we got map domination, cross it together.
Yeah. Relics
relics and fiends and events that transpire the narrative of moving towards Armageddon and all that.
Yeah. So then you're like, well, how do we get all the cults to join together?
Right.
Like, oh, well, you make a force that doesn't want the world.
What's the unifying force despite your path or aspect of the dark one?
Well, tell us, since I mentioned it, tell us about the Kickstarter that's coming up.
Yeah. Iconoclasm, it's a cooperative expansion to Eschaton. The cultists will be working together to try to end the world. So there is essentially an AI Inquisitor force is all driven by decks and essentially a campaign board that will guide the Inquisitors in their campaign to try to save the world. So you are trying to stop them.
I just love that. Trying to end the world. It's just, it's just so on brand. Does that mean there's a solo mode if there's cooperative?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's got to be really exciting, and especially in 2023 world. Like we get so many people asking, how can we play Pirate Board solo?
Yes. Every day. Every day.
Yeah. So now you provide this Kickstarter will do that. Right?
Yeah.
So when does it launch?
The date is tentative. It's going to be probably late summer sometime.
Circa Gen Con-ish?
We'll shoot for it. No promises.
Or at least you'll be promoting it.
Yes.
Right. We'll be promoting
promotion
it.
will happen then.
Yeah. Everything's designed. Everything's finished out. It's just a matter of just last minute tweaks, getting everything exactly where we want it before we have
some assets, some promotion type stuff. That's always like the kind of the important part, because we just want to make sure as many people can see it as possible.
Yeah, of course,
because we're excited, but we want to get everyone else as excited as we are about it. Of course,
I'm in a couple of these like RPG zine Facebook groups, and people will be like, I don't want to run ads, like it feels wrong. And I was like, look, dude,
it's
I just saw you talking about that the other day. I was like, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah,
I was like, dude, look, I know it feels wrong, but like if you think about it as like you're paying money to get it in front of someone who never would have seen it otherwise,
right?
Then you're really doing everybody a service. Everybody wins.
Right,
like they want the thing that you're making, Like,
you're just letting them know it exists. That's all.
And I want to see ads from other creators. Like I might not ever see it otherwise.
When people are like, oh, I saw so many, like for Shadow Dark, I saw so many Facebook ads. Like, what would you rather have seen?
Right.
Like a stupid wallet that like hair,
Right.
Yeah. A hardware Kickstarter that'll never deliver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, I would give me more of that.
Right.
Yeah. So
having things that you're interested in curated to you isn't always the worst thing.
No, I mean, I think that's maybe a differentiating view of the world, but I would rather have ads. People are like, I don't want to share my data. It's like, no, give me the ads. I want to see. I don't have enough dice. I have too many dice, but I could use more dice. Like,
there's always room for more.
There's always room for more dice. Yeah. Okay, so we of course cannot chat without talking about Velnias.
Yeah.
Did I say it right?
Yeah, Velnias. Yeah.
I would have said Velnias if you're Googling it.
Yeah, Lithuanian, it's a common language. You should know better.
Yeah, so like you already made cool games, and I was like, oh, these guys make cool games. In the booth, we're going to talk about the booth in a minute, but you're also all in a fucking metal band.
Yeah, that's
like, it's not even different people. It's not like, oh, there's like maybe a bass player, or no, you play bass.
That's right.
You play bass. It's almost the same people that run the booth at the convention I love this. Like, tell me about the band. I really want to know how it got started, like the design ethos behind your music, and like, is there crossover? Is the crossover planned? Is it the same world? That kind of thing.
Right. I mean, it's just a long-standing project. Music's been important to me forever, since like as long as I can remember. My grandfather was in the opera, and then growing up, just consuming all of it and thinking it was the coolest thing in the world. So it started as a project 17 years ago now.
This band.
Yeah. And so, it's like a progressive, atmospheric, heavy metal kind of thing. It's definitely of a similar vibe and aesthetic, to what we do with games and whatnot.
I mean, I think it has like black metal, doom metal influence, but there's also like a strong kind of Tool vibe.
Yeah. We like to keep it introspective and interesting, not get stuck in, conventions. Sure.
Listen to a clip. This is walk us in. What?
Yeah. So this is our, from our recent EP that we released in January, rending of Dyadic Convolution.
All right, here we go. Velnias.
Yep.
So do you think there's like a lot of crossover between music and gaming, or do you think we're the weird ones?
This is like a whole thing. I think that inherently heavy metal is just born of gaming in a lot of ways. In the modern context, it's something that's overlooked and people like to act like they're cooler than it. But at the core of all the bands that everyone loves, it's all these nerdy things like Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer. Like, you can't listen to Bolt Thrower and not know what Warhammer 40,000 is. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's not for you if you don't know what it is. Like, but these people act like they're too cool for it because, you got to be more obscure and weirder, but you're still just following conventions and stuff. So I think 100% overlap. I think it's one and the same. It's an escape. It's a fantasy. It's drawing upon the same inspiration.
Like, do you know anybody else that has crossed over as much as the two of you have?
Directly, as far as like our peers known, there's Jake Rogers of Visigoth in Salt Lake City is an avid gamer and everything, and a lot of his music reflects that, but making his own games, I think not. I
mean, I think that that's the thing, is that you guys are established as game makers. There's a lot of people especially in the world, in the metal scene, that play D&D.
Right.
I know guys that play like in the van. Right. You know, like from city to city. Yeah. But you guys have definitely taken it to a new level, which I respect. It's
one of those things that I feel like we go to shows and, the icebreaker is always like the music. And then you just try to like drop in a nerd reference to see, are we going to be on the same page? Like, can we just talk about like Dungeons and Dragons now? Right. Like, it would be really great if we could just talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Especially in this sect of metal, it's role playing and this stuff. It's all storytelling, whether it's like a known mythology that, you're a Viking metal band. What are you singing about? You're singing about myths. You're singing about stories. And then role playing is just that. It's modern mythology in a way. It's exploring a world. It's like kind of a journey mentally in the same way that indulging in music or a musical journey is to me.
I have so many questions. So the thing I was thinking about just now is like, are you ever, I mean, obviously this would be a good problem to have, but are you ever worried that the band gets so big that it's weird to be at conventions?
I don't know. We make such obscure, strange, almost inaccessible music that I would love that. I would love that. But
like, if that's a problem, you're like,
let's solve that problem. Yeah, that sounds great.
I'll continue to plug away at it and hope that we can have enough resonant minds that really enjoy both, Yeah.
Well, we were chatting about this earlier, but is there a primary and a secondary?
No, it's a constant battle because they're both so important that, just one's kind of a break from the other. That's it. Just either way. Switch gears for a little bit, think about storytelling here. And then music's just another, especially the way we write, it's another exploration. It's more, again, storytelling. So just like, okay, let's switch the language we're speaking. We're going to go to tonalities rather than words and stuff. Yeah, okay. So I find it to have a lot of overlap, and flexing one kind of inspires the other in that way because you're excited. And that's the big thing, is just constantly looking at the world, reinterpreting it, and spewing it back out through whatever the medium is.
Yeah. I also think you guys are fortunate in the same way that I am to have two different outlets for your creativity. Because I think a lot of people, I mean, I know a lot of guys in bands who like, they started the band and like, that's the thing they do. And like, they can't do anything else creative that will make money. So they're like kind of tied to this one creative endeavor, but you guys have found a way to like, oh, well, that thing is a thing and this is a thing, and they're both creative in different ways. That's such a good like setup.
I mean, life's quick, and it just like, you have to follow the things that excite you, and I don't know, explore. It just, that's the thing, is it's really a reason to wake up every day. You're like, okay, cool. Stories, music.
And I'm so greedy. I just want to do everything, if possible, because life is short. Like, that's the thing. I'm like, how can we pack all of this stuff in as short amount of time as possible? Because I want to tour to different cities. I want to go to different conventions. I want to put out all these different books, and I want to do it as quickly as possible. But of course, like, it is, thoroughly and is like, with as much passion as possible. And so, having those overlaps is really nice. I mean, I get to use the same art styles for all of the posters and t-shirts for both, creative outlets, which is great. I just get to practice in a bunch of different ways, but, really grow. So it's exciting.
Yeah. I actually had my Velnias shirt on all day when I was getting ready. And I was like, excellent. It's like, I actually forgot. I was like, oh, wait, this is the band, not the game. Because I also have the
sigil.
Yeah. The sigil. Yeah. I want to ask, are you guys ever considering like mixing the two tours? Because I know you've talked about, I've pushed you guys to sell the games at shows.
Yeah.
But like, you could totally, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to go to the board game store.
Right.
And then, hey, by the way, come see us tomorrow at the club.
I mean, I think Adam and I constantly talk about how we're insane road warriors, and to us, being out and about like that is among the best things we can do with our time. So without a doubt, like there will be, that Velnias and Archon.
We want that to happen.
And even with that, we took our, Dread Shores with us on our last musical tour. And then we're talking about, okay, if you see us at Origins, we're going to have records this time. So now they have the space to transfer.
Why you have to.
Space mostly. Yeah. Now we have the space to transfer.
Now we have the space. Now we have the tour van.
Yeah.
It's not like you guys make Dream Pop. It's like they work so well.
Right. And it's like, it's a thing having done them separately for a minute, like, because Adam had been doing the games, I had been doing the music, and then our lives really started crossing in both regards, like 2016 or so. So it's kind of like, is there an amount of this? And deciding that absolutely, like this is who we are as people, and what greater thing than just to take our creative voice, whatever capacity in all this stuff. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about Nexus Infernum before we dig into this guy.
Yeah, sure.
If Eschaton is the deck builder meets, map world domination where you are controlling a cult, what's Nexus Infernum?
Dice-driven strategy game. That's the core mechanics of it. It's set in the same world as Eschaton, so in the depths of the Citadel, which is the capital of the accursed realm.
Sure.
There's an ancient temple, and in that temple there are portals that are gateways to another world. And as you as a necromancer, you want access to that power, because with that power you'll be able to make pacts with demons. You can't reach it yourself, so you need skeletal minions to do your bidding. So those skeletal minions are going to be down in the Nexus, channeling that arcane energy. You're going to be making pacts with demons along the way, which improve your own powers. It's a race to become the most blasphemous in the realm.
It's just perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, I just have dreams of like playing a video game where you're a necromancer.
Right.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
A better profession.
Like, yeah, Skyrim's cool, but like, what if you were, like, you start as a necromancer, but at the end you're like controlling hordes and like, there's places you can't go. I love that.
Yeah.
Gaming is all about wish fulfillment. So, we want to like be in that space.
It definitely is. So, I mean, it's the same kind of thing. You guys had this cool idea mechanically and you realized the necromancy thing worked well or?
Yeah, kind of. I think like at the root of it, Adam had with his other banner made another game that the ecosystem of it was very inspiring because it was a very contained system, kind of crawling around in a crypt and stuff. And so that space was interesting. And we kind of went from there. We're like, what would be a relevant thing within our world?
Yeah.
And then kind of, developed like, okay, well, we want skeletons. We're going to be, okay, well, if you're doing skeletons, you're going to be a necromancer because you're commanding skeletons. What are the skeletons doing for you as a necromancer? Well, you're seeking power, right? So they're going to be your workers. They're going to be channeling. So it just kind of like flowed together from a series, like a tangent of ideas. And
thinking about like, you're trying to think, okay, so as like a necromancer, what would your resources be? Like, or what are you trying to do as a necromancer? What's your ultimate goal? And you're like, well, you probably want more power. Right. But how do you get that? There's probably a way that you can make pacts with demons or like collect relics or something like that. And we went with the demon angle, but that became just a fun mechanism of having a board with a simple to understand resource that you can then use to command your skeletons. You can use it in multiple ways. We try to like give you as many interesting decisions as possible. Like that's like kind of like the core design philosophy is interesting decisions all the time.
Yeah. You really have to like, do I sacrifice my skeletons for more power?
Right.
Or suck out of the portal?
Yeah.
That's very cool. So how is that went to Kickstarter, I take it?
Yeah, that one went to Kickstarter as well. Also succeeded. We've done a couple print runs on it now. So
is there an expansion?
We have stuff in mind, but it's with Iconoclasm has taken a lot of our energy. So it's in the pipeline.
Okay, gotcha. Would you say that Eschaton is like more of the flagship being the first game?
Right. I mean, it carries the world with it. So it's a really good access point to everything that is happening, like Adam said, in the accursed realm that we've been developing. And I think the narrative element draws people in. You feel
absolutely
more invested in this. Is where Nexus Infernum is definitely rich with lore and like it ties into the same mythology and everything, but it's ultimately focused and more, like Adam said, strategic. It's just a little more chess-like, I guess, rather than world domination and long scale planning and stuff.
They play differently too. I mean, really kind of, we didn't want to make the same game again when we're going to Nexus. So Eschaton is very much you're building a cult. It's a slow build. There's a narrative that's unfolding. Whereas Nexus is just hardcore dice rolling, dice management. You have these like wonderful moments of success where you're blowing up skeletons at a portal and reaping tons of energy. It's very like, PvP, like you have these like aggressive moments, and we incentivize that in the game. Like you can steal points from other players. If you're not attacking other players in Nexus, you're not going to do well. Right. Like in Eschaton, there are strategies that work. You can sit in the corners of the realm and just try to delve purely into the arcane and collect relics and complete omens when they come up. That's a valid strategy. Yeah. You don't necessarily need to fight the other players for that to work out for you. Of course, it probably will go better if you do. Right. But in Nexus, it is all about fighting.
Yeah. I've had a couple Eschaton games like that where you're like, oh, that guy's gonna lose. Oh, usually it's me. I'm like, I'm gonna lose. Like I always go for either the Old City or the Isle of Storms because I'm a pirate board guy.
Yeah, you sail away.
It's usually the Old City. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely where like the pirate culture
just hunker down. Yeah.
And like then I end up winning because I get this bonus the whole game, and like I don't know. Get some relics or something that, there's lots of strategies. And then you've got these for the listeners. There's like this deck mechanic that's kind of like Pandemic where you're shuffling events into a deck so you don't know when they're going to happen, but they kind of chapter mark parts of the game. And sometimes those will turn up and like anybody who owns this one region gets 9 victory points. You're like, holy shit, I'm winning.
Yeah.
The winds of change.
You could be lucky and just be in that place, or suddenly everyone pivots and says, oh, we need to do that because that's a lot of points.
Yeah. And I also like the plague mechanics. So you just drop a plague into a city and like it's basically useless until the plague kills everybody. And
right.
It's like a desert wasteland. There's so much role-playing opportunity.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Dread Shores and Black Horizons. This is the debut role-playing adventure from you guys.
Yeah.
It's system agnostic, but there's development in that topic, I believe.
Yeah, so we're exploring the realm. So people who are familiar with Eschaton, there's 13 territories in the realm. We're going to be putting out modules that explore those various territories. Ideas that we've hinted at in the board games, just very slightly, are going to be more fleshed out now. We are developing a rule set down the line, but the goal is to just make sure that these things can be in the hands of people who want to play it. So if you're playing, a work board game, if you're playing a Shadow Dark game, if you're playing 5e, whatever, we want it to be a tool for you, because that's the thing. I feel like for me as a game master, like, I just want things that are going to work for me in the moment. I don't necessarily want to get bogged down in rules unless the rules are specifically going to help whatever that narrative is.
Yeah. Well, we played this at our meetup group. Was it 2 months ago, maybe?
Right back in March.
I think that the prose in it is like perfect. It's like, it's not very Morkborg in that there's lots of prose, but it's so you guys that it like makes up for, I don't want to say the verbosity, but like when you were like reading the text to me, I was like, yes, give me more. Like I don't want to spoil it, but it's very watery, island driven. And there's just some language in here that I think really helps deliver that kind of, what do you call it? The realm? What do you call it?
Yeah, the accursed realm.
The accursed realm. Yeah. So I'm excited to see more. I mean, what's the elevator pitch for people who are like, oh, I want to check it out?
For Dread Shores?
Yeah, for Dread
specifically. Well, you're set on an expedition by one of the cults, seeking out more information about a happening that's taking place far in the east. So you set sail on your adventure, and, as things go in the cursed realm, a mishap happens, and
don't go well.
You find yourself in a situation and having to navigate through things that just happen to take place in this world. It's another day.
Wait, so in your guys' mind, is it like kind of like the Addams Family, where people who live in the realm, like they want bad things to happen?
I don't think that everyone sees it as bad is the thing. It is kind of gray if you're living in the realm. I mean, and you're told of this one that's coming, and it's parallels to the real world where people dump into religions. This is just what's happening. This is the destiny that's been laid out if you're of one of these cults. And if he's coming, of course you want to earn his favor. And it's not necessarily always bloodshed. It could just be that your cult's rallied around a cursed item, but it's not cursed to you because it brings good fortune. So, you're earning favor, you're following the dark one, but are you truly evil? So there's shades. There's a gradient of how these things go. And on the ground level, it all seems completely, relative to who you are.
I'm thinking about the like iconoclastic, like cultists.
Oh, right.
Like, oh, I'm shipwrecked. Like you and I might be like, this sucks. But if you're like, this is what the Dark One wanted.
This is his will.
I've been chosen.
I'm chosen.
His will.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, and that's why I think role playing in the world will be fun because, building your character and everything, it's how you fit into that picture, like where your allegiance lies, to this great happening that's supposedly taking place? Or are you just somebody trying to make it? Are relics worth money to you? Are they worth the favor of the Dark One, you know, and stuff like that? A lot to explore, I think.
Definitely a lot to explore. Well, I had a lot of fun playing it. It was on Kickstarter. It's available on your website now.
That it is.
Yeah, go grab it. So give us the like elevator pitch for where you're at on the RPG. I mean, is that you ready to talk about it?
Well, Adam has
the rule set.
Yeah,
well,
Adam has
the rule
rules
set
that
is it's kind of far out right now, but I want to get people excited about it. It is designed to fit the themes of doom and dread of a world that you are constantly at risk and peril of the unknown. So the main mechanic of it that I'm probably most excited about is we have a hit point system, which is called Resolve. And rather than your character sustaining an amount of damage over time, this is sort of their will breaking down. So you're encountering terrible things that are happening. You may be, scuffed and bruised in a fight, you're going to start losing the will to continue. So that's sort of the foundation of how you're going to be interacting with the world. So as terrible things are happening, your character is breaking down over time and you're dealing with the consequences of that. But there's other very similar role-playing mechanics that people are going to see. So it's still a D20 system at its core, but we're looking to sort of like explore more of like the narrative side of this and give mechanics that will support the narrative.
Yeah. Are there like any playtest documents floating around that people can check out?
They'll be coming out.
They'll be coming out. We're going to be working mainly in the form of the modules, and we're going to be teasing that out over time as we work our way towards that book. And we're working towards a campaign setting for all of this as well.
Nice. So like a bigger book.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we want to keep those things separate because, again, we really want people to be able to use this with whatever game system is most appealing to them. But ultimately, like if they want to try out this rule set, that would be, that'd be great. Right. It's something that appeals to me.
I think people will be excited. I mean, for both of us, we're very heavily into role playing as a narrative event. Like it's the combat sim nature of it. We go play a minis game if that's ultimately what we're looking for. So we want things that, like Adam said, encourage storytelling, encourage interesting character choices and interaction. And right now, a good way to do that is the storytelling. So providing people access to the world. And then I can't wait to share the rules because it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah. I mean, having played the first draft or whatever.
I think you're one of the few people that's actually outside playing.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it like definitely makes sense to 5e players, but you've got a different set of skills if you can call them that.
Right.
And like you said, the resolve is a cool mechanic.
Right.
It fits. It's almost like kind of Call of Cthulhu or Lovecraftian. You're mixing sanity in with hit points.
Right.
So you quit thinking of it as, like you can take 8 more slashes before your body bleeds out.
Because I mean, like that as a metric is always to me, especially Adam and I talk a lot about like how bizarre that can feel at times. Because when you're trying to tell a story and you're like, I took D8 hit points. What does that narratively mean? You can put it on a scale and sure, like and there's various opinions.
It depends on the GM too. Like I feel like GM can like absolutely roll with it in a way that like it works out.
Totally.
But sometimes I feel like, I mean, I just remember like starting, role playing, years ago and just being like, I don't know, I'm just imagining it as a video game. My character is getting hit in the head with an axe like 7 times.
Yeah,
just watching. They seem fine. But like looking at that kind of thing and also just separating out those types of wounds. So really like one of the facets that I don't even think we got to in the game because everyone was just rolling super well was if you hit the bottom of resolve, that's when you actually start taking injuries, which are like lasting outcomes for your character that you can recover from, but they are going to become part of your character. So we really want that to, again, be part of the narrative of the game.
Yeah, it's a cool system. I'm excited to see how it unfolds. But also, I think it's cool to do them separate because, you don't want to exclude people. Like we talk about this all the time with Dark Caribbean, which is my next project.
Yeah.
Like if I put too many stats in there, you want to scare people away. But if they would just listen to you, that you know that your world is best served using your system, right? Like that's kind of what you're thinking. Like
that's
if
the
you play
idea.
5e in the cursed realm, like doesn't really make sense. Like
there's a Dragonborn now. I don't know. It's like they're not. It's a realm populated by people. It's just humans that live in this. So,
but I think that the One Ring team did a really good job with this, and that they did first with Cubicle 7 and now with Free League. The One Ring is like, that's if you want to play a Tolkien game, that's it.
Right.
But also people like 5e, so they've adapted it and they've got the Lord of the Rings role-playing game. So you serves both flavors. So I think that's smart move. With that in mind, I want to like kind of zoom out or zoom back in time.
Sure.
You know, to the good old days of sitting in the basement or the garage playing these like old role-playing games. What are your guys' like seminal memories? What like systems were you playing back then? Like what are some of those like, you know, core, you know, like in Inside Out? What are your dark fantasy core memories?
For dark fantasy in general, I think like this is outside of role playing, not specifically to it, but Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 were a huge part of like that grim dark storytelling.
You mean the miniatures game?
The miniatures game. Yeah. Adam did a bunch with the role playing game. Yeah. I did World of Darkness was my first entry into role playing. I have just memories of, you know, it's like the 90s. So like no or proto internet. You're just going over some like high school senior's house to their basement and hanging out and just like the stories unfolding. And it, you know, the first foray into that is just absolutely fascinating because it was so narrative and just like so immersive and everything felt like, oh, you could see this all panning out.
Were you playing vampire?
Yeah, vampire.
So you are a vampire.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was crucified and died pretty quickly in the campaign we were doing. But and then Adam introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons later in high school. Yeah. And so I think I similarly died pretty quickly, but to crossbow bolt, cobalt or something. Yeah.
We're talking like 3, 5?
3?
That must have been 3 when we were.
It was right before
3,
5.
Yeah. When I was running it at that point.
Did you guys kind of follow the zeitgeist and like not play D&D in college like so many people our age have, or did you keep going?
Oh, it's like a lifetime thing for me. The first role-playing game experience that I had was at my friend Eric Smith's birthday party. I think maybe it was like his 8th or 7th birthday party. Mm-hmm. So this was probably like 1990 or something like that. And his dad had written up a fantasy role-playing game system, very like heavily D&D based. We just called it D&D at the time. We didn't really know any better. We were kids.
Sure.
And, you know, I was given this Ralpartha ninja miniature that they had painted, like, and we had a dice bag that had like a rune for A was written on it. So I had this dice bag and this miniature, and we sat down at a table with graph paper and dice, and it was just like the whole world opened for me. Just, you know, we're in a dungeon, we're making these decisions, like, and we had to, the way that it was played, which was totally fascinating to me at the time, was that he would describe the dungeon to us, and one of us would have to draw it. We would be sitting there and you'd be like, okay, the corridor extends 30 feet into the darkness ahead of you. It's 10 by 10 feet wide. There's a chamber at the following end, which is 30 by 30 feet. There's a door on the left side. Yeah. And I'm frantically trying to draw this along the way, you know, trying to figure this out, you know, and I feel like I remember the first encounter we had was actually doppelgangers. So we were fighting like a clone group of our own party and like how strange that was to experience. But it was very like old school feeling. Like, I mean, like not that we knew anything at the time, but like thinking back on it, like just in terms of the renaissance of stuff that we see today, it was open table. So, you know, kids could come and go from it. It didn't really necessarily matter. And it was also felt like you were playing an MMORPG because it was a big, massive campaign setting, and we all had our groups had our own hex maps. So we would be in a city and we would see like, you know, another group months later when we would play and we had played before and here's the hexes that we have explored.
Oh, you would like compare maps? That's cool.
Yeah. And he was running it for like, you know, there was like his friends who were all adults. I mean, like that had much more interesting campaigns that were happening. And they had like mass strategy kingdom building, like, you know, old school, like Avalon Hill style strategy stuff with like chipboard tokens on the map. So while we were like, you know, little kid, you know, dumb adventurers trying to explore a tomb and killing each other along the way, they would have these wild, like strategic meetings where we would encounter, we'd say, oh yeah, there's like, you know, 7 battalions of dwarves marching across the Eastern Plains. That's this other person's cool. Like, you know, actual army, because they're playing a strategy game in the same world that we're role playing. So it just kind of blew my mind at that point. So just like a lifelong gamer.
Wait, so was it like the strategy games that they were playing, were they actual games?
Yeah.
So was that like a rule set that they had also come up with?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So it was like, you know, so that sort of like intellectual commons of the time where everyone was kind of making their own D&D variants.
Yeah. So where was this?
This was in Naperville, Illinois.
I mean, it sounds just like Geneva. Like,
oh yeah. I mean, like my first Gen Con was, I think 1992. So it was like shortly afterward. I've gone to every single Gen Con since.
Really?
Yes. I've never missed one.
Do you keep in touch with this guy?
Oh yeah.
Has he like played your games?
I don't know if he has.
That's a good question.
Time to time, but like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, you know, how much that influence has just kind of like locked in my mind. So I was just looking at my first character sheet last night, actually.
Yeah.
Like I had dug out my old binders and was kind of going through stuff, and it was an index card, you know, and it was like, had, pen was written for like, strength, dexterity, intelligence. And then my horrible child handwriting, writing like poison of health, I didn't know how to spell potion, is on there. It's like elven boots, like the random treasures that we had collected along the way.
Do you remember the mechanics at all?
Yeah, it was like core like D&D style mechanics. So I mean, like things that you would be familiar to most like AD&D players. All that kind of stuff lived in there. But it had like a lot of really interesting like leveling mechanics. Was all based on money, so you'd have to pay for training. Like fighters would train in specific like equipment. So it's like, oh, level 3 now I've like trained in crossbows, so now I can use crossbows.
A lot of OSR tenets in that.
Yeah.
I mean, you've mentioned mapping your own dungeons, money as XP.
Yeah.
Deadly.
Oh yeah. So deadly.
Rules light sounds maybe.
Rules heavy. Lots of like D100 tables, like interesting, weird meta magic things. Like, I mean, the fact that there was a whole strategy game baked in on top of it in kingdom building. There's a lot of mechanics.
So like, can people play this game?
I know. I mean, like it's not published. He keeps talking about it, but like, and I have like the printed, it was like the printed out version of it that's like in my binder, and it's it's printed on the type of paper that the dot matrix we have to peel off the sides. Like that's how. And I have character sheets that I wrote on a typewriter, like to be like, here's my new character that I'm doing, because I didn't have a computer at home. It was just like typewriter. Oh man, that sounds awesome. It was cool. Like, I mean, totally. It sounds cool by today's standards. Yeah, I mean, like, I really I want to continuously relive that kind of experience. Do they still play? It's so rare, and I mean, I haven't I haven't played in that dudes campaign. They're still raging that campaign. Yeah, still playing. There's always like whispers about it, but like it's who knows? I would play again. Of course. I mean, like we should Rich, if you're listening, let's play, please. Yeah, I really like the system mixing. Like we've done that a bunch with pirate games where you mix a war, a ship naval war game in with your role playing game. Yeah, I love the idea of like, oh, we're doing a like big 2,000 point battle, and your character can show up and like, swing his axe. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And cool that other people, it was just other people in the world. Like we didn't even know those players. We never even met them, but we'd encounter things that they were doing. And we would cause problems for them too. Cause we'd like, mess up things in the world and then they would get the report on that later. Yeah. It just seems very like you're watching, I guess, Two Towers. Oh yeah. And like they're Legolas and Aragorn, and like they're worrying about these big world problems, and you're like this little dude, like, oh my god, these orcs just killed my family, please help. Here, take this take this sword, kid. And you're like, no, I'm gonna go this way. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was always something like that. That's just that's very cool. Before we move on, I want to talk about Forbidden Lands, because I feel like we all discovered Forbidden Lands. At the same time. Yeah. I thought Forbidden Lands was, I don't know, a dinosaur game? I guess. The box is not, you open the box and that's where the real art lies. And you guys got a copy at Genghis Khan and opened the box, and I was like, wait, what is that? What is that game? I now have a copy over there. Over there. Yeah. I feel like this game is like a modern encapsulation of like everything we thought D&D might have been. Yeah. When we were kids. I mean, I didn't play a lot of D&D as a kid. I was much more into Star Wars and science fiction, Alien, other important stuff, which we can talk about. But Forbidden Lands, they do this. I mean, part of it is they're using a lot of the art from the old 80s Draken and More, I think. Tell me what you guys think about Forbidden Lands. Well, we picked it up, we opened it. We haven't had the chance to actually play it or delve into it. I don't know if you have yet. We played it at Ship of the Dead meetup. Oh, nice. I played once. Yeah. I thought the world exploration and the world building seemed really interesting. I flipped through just the DM section, just seeing how you would run it, because ideally with more time, I would love to be running a session of that. But yeah, it's just the craft of just like what it means to be an adventurer in this place, and the aspect of survival rather than the fantastic kind of like the low fantasy element was really appealing to me, because when everyone's a wizard of high level running around, you're like, what's the story here? Why is this all happening? Here it's like, the history was very appealing. It's set up.
sometimes a hard sell on new fantasies, and just reading through the whole, worldcraft and the lore behind what they had created for their game, I was, it was like short, sweet, and enough to draw you in to start storytelling.
And all black and white art.
And all black and white art. Just
love it.
Yeah, wonderfully, just like
My
nostalgic.
brother, Tyler is cringing right now because he's not like
He doesn't like it.
He's not. Yeah, he just kind of comes from a different aesthetic.
Right. Yeah, of course. He's more the front of the box than the inside of the book.
Yeah, maybe. Or just like, I remember for me growing up, did you guys ever play Dark Castle?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that game just really, it was not that great of a game. Like it's like a side scroller platformer where you like go into this dark castle and, but those black and white like images just, they leave so much room for you to fill it in yourself.
Right.
And then like with the 5e stuff, it's like, oh, I know exactly what this monster looks like. There's, if I'm imagining something different, I'm breaking the canon.
And I think with like all these things with fantasy, that's kind of like been the appeal, just because that's probably what, we're all about the same age. We were all raised on is like magic came out and you're like, oh, dark ritual, sweet. Like you just get this like, it's this like abstract
terror
piece.
in the card.
Right.
Whoa.
You put these out in front of kids and like, yeah, it gets the imagination whirring rather than just showcasing like a giant thing, which is sometimes fine too. But like you were given this breadcrumb trail to tell our own stories with a lot of fantasy that came out. And that box set, like same thing. It just like popped me right back to seeing that kind of art, from Warhammer, like John Blanche stuff.
John Blanche recently retired.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Like
so
opening those Warhammer
him,
books, that ink artwork that was just like, you're like, I don't know what this is, but like, bam, imagination just goes infinite.
It's like, what are these weird, creepy cherubs, floating around? There's like people praying to like a machine that doesn't make any sense. And you're like, I want to know more. Like I'm ready. Like I'm in. Like great. This is the aesthetic I want to dwell in.
My thing with Warhammer was Nagash.
Supreme Lord of the Undead.
Supreme Lord of the Undead. What?
Yeah. Oh yeah, stand there with a model.
Yeah, like, come on. That's like it's not like you can put him in your army,
right?
Like,
oh yeah, and that artwork, that full page spread on.
I'm dead. Like that was like
slain.
that book, like
slain.
that Warhammer Armies Undead book, and also the Skaven book. Just blew my mind.
Right.
Like looking at the map of like like the Skaven tunnels, like here's all the places where these Skaven tunnels are going. And of course they're like really intertwined with the undead of that world. So it was just
and chaos,
such good story, like weird narrative just based on like those black and white illustrations and a little bit of lore, to sell some miniatures. But like, I'm in, I bought them.
I think there are some guys at the company that are trying to sell miniatures, but there are other guys at the company who like
it's kind of like a secret sauce is like at the heart of it. Games Workshop is a miniatures company that wants to sell miniatures and still are, but like they had this power team of storytellers and writers that built that world. And like kind of almost to the miniatures, like kind of this reciprocating like resonance that just brought together something magical, I think, like, cause it's so either if it's 40K or fantasy, I think both are immersive, deep, interesting. And if they're there to sell minis, they win. Cause like, I want to buy them.
You have so many roads of like, there's so many methods of entry to that world. Like you could just want to sit there and paint cool miniatures, which was me. Like, I definitely got into painting miniatures as like a kid and carried that on. But like, you start reading the lore and like learning about the world. Yeah. And that's kind of the fun part about all of this is that you really just want to invest in a place in like a narrative.
It's interesting because the painting the miniatures has got me out of Warhammer.
Oh no.
My brother played Warhammer and 40K. And, after high school, when I was like kind of in college era, I was like, oh, I'm going to play 40K, like, and I'm going to paint my army perfect.
Yeah.
And I did like one squad of Dark Angels. I was like, fuck this. I'm selling this. Like,
right.
Just too perfectionist,
I understand. Yeah.
I should have played something like Warhammer where each guy looks different, because I just,
because the early like second edition Space Marines are all standing there bolt gun like this.
Like
so
that.
Like if one's slightly off the sculpt plus the paint, you're like, and being a perfectionist,
the paints were hard to use back then too.
Yeah. You're painting with tar. It's like,
you have hard. To add water every 10 seconds.
Right.
Yeah. There was no like cool tech that people have today, like wet palettes and like, YouTube videos where people are explaining.
Or 3D printers. Now you can be like, I want this weapon.
That guy.
Right. Done.
So you guys still play?
No, it's been a minute since
that.
I've got my army sitting around, but
When you say which system?
For 40K and fantasy.
Because the new edition just came out.
Right. 10th edition. I follow it because I'm like intrigued, like, as a company and design stuff, like it's interesting to see somebody on that scale, like, and just because of that legacy and how it's kind of interwoven into our lives and our inspiration story. I love the idea of sitting down and playing like Warhammer.
Yeah,
we have Necromunda was something we may foray into because it's a little more.
They had Necromunda. You guys have like a not Hobby Lobby. We had like a small little game store, hobby store that like mostly they sold planes and trains, but they had a little Games Workshop section. They always had Necromunda.
Really?
And I was like, dude,
that's super obscure. Yeah.
I mean, they sold a decent amount of Games Workshop, but Necromunda wasn't like a huge title for them. That and Space Hulk.
Right.
Yeah. Man, love that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you're like a mech warrior fighting aliens in a old spaceship? Sign me up.
Right. Yeah.
I want to jump back to Magic the Gathering because I felt like that was probably, I didn't read a lot of fantasy, but I remember a friend showing me Magic the Gathering in probably like 95 or 96 and being like, having that same thing, like, what? Like also one of the 5 colors is black, like Dark Ritual. And reminded me when you said that when we were at Genghis Khan, I think we all mentioned that we played the same colors. What colors did you play?
I was green and black.
Yeah, and you're red and black?
Red and black,
okay, because I was green and black. That was like my preferred, you know?
Yeah. It's like that beautiful like duality of the growth and the decay and mixing into this horrible thing together.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Grateful Dead. Like, there you go. You know, like I love hippie jam bands and death metal. So so did you guys play a lot? Was that a big influence for you guys?
When at a younger age,
when we were playing, I mean, like it definitely played a ton. I feel like got into it like right at the wrong time,
and right before Fallen Empires and
so
Homelands.
Like I mean, like
that's exactly when I got in.
Yeah, so I mean, like I was like, I remember being at Gen Con and then somebody at the Wizards of the Coast booth being like, Legends is sold out, you know, like that was like a thing, like that was like a moment in time, but I had not really gotten into it at that point. So I was like, oh, I've got like a handful of revised cards, mostly 4th edition, more Fallen Empires than like I can really like.
Yeah, you could build a house out of it.
Pretty much.
Because we got excited and that was all that was available then.
Well, and they overprinted that set. It like killed Magic.
We did a Fallen Empires draft right around our wedding, which was like 5 years ago. So our friend located a box of sealed Fallen Empires. And it's
all phthalids and
hominids are the way to go. Apparently,
hominids.
That was the
giant lobster monster was like unstoppable because it was like 6'5" and everything else was like 1-2.
Yeah.
Oh, the good old days. But I quit playing back then. Is it the same for you?
Adam rekindled it briefly, like he bought us all commander decks as a kind of a ha thing.
Yeah, let's play Magic for a minute.
Isn't Charlie like?
Yeah, our other our friend Charlie, who's a part of all this in various ways. He runs a game store, so he's kind of the dealer, and he has the hotness all the time. Yeah, so
now they're doing 40K Magic, like
right.
And Lord of the Rings Magic.
Magic.
He just got in the shipment for that.
He sent us a picture just like 10 minutes
ago.
Really,
we just got it. Yeah, he runs Grandmaster Games in Boulder, and there's another one in Oak Park, Illinois.
Man, I got to go check that out.
Yeah,
it's a cool spot.
We'll go play there sometime.
It's a weird time to be alive. I never thought that Lord of the Rings Magic.
And that's kind of the frustration I feel is like, as a youth with all of these things, like whether it be heavy metal music or Magic the Gathering or Warhammer or Star Wars, you know, as the parents watching us indulge in these things as children, they were like, you got to stop. You got to become go get a job, do this. But like now had we, you know, the people have YouTube channels where they paint miniatures and stuff. Like all this stuff is mainstream culture, and it's like D&D is like beyond mainstream culture. And it's like kind of jarring that everyone's accepted all these things, and you're just kind of like, well, I guess this is the future. We were right.
And the same thing with video games. I mean, the narrative when we were kids was like, get outside, dude.
Right. And now
it's like, I basically play video games for a living.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm making stuff. But,
Right.
The vibe was definitely like, you're going to grow out of this. When is it going to happen?
Right.
You know, and I think, but
those industries are all like chic giants, just as relevant as any other part of our culture right now. So as designers, it's super interesting because you try and explain, hey, we make board games, and you sell it to somebody generationally, like 2 generations ahead of us. So like Monopoly, like Scrabble, you're like, well, I guess of the lineage, but like, you know, everyone that played those games as children has now grown up and has money and still enjoys indulging in that nostalgia and stuff.
Those things are still fun.
Turns out storytelling doesn't get old. So
no, it definitely doesn't. Do you guys ever watch How I Met Your Mother?
No, I'm not familiar.
So there's an episode of this show where like one of the characters' dad he's like estranged, and he shows it back up in her life, and like he's this deadbeat who just makes board games and like goes to these conventions to try to sell the board games. And the way they depict it in the show is like, oh, it's like Operation, but like the the things actually explode, and these guys, he's terrible, you know.
Oh no.
But I'm like, the way that they describe a board game designer is like very negative, and I'm like,
but that's because like, have you met normal people?
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
boring, and I don't, like they have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. I just think it's a very, like, we live in a very cool time where we get to do the things that we're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's an audience.
It's definitely vindicating. Like,
it
it's
is
just being like a really like unapologetic nerd for so long and being like, oh yeah.
I mean, I judge people the other way. I'm like, okay, so you're one dimensional and have nothing of interest to contribute. Great. Like I have no one to interact with you. It's just litmus test of a person's
like
metal.
What games can we play together?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a story.
Well, let's talk about the Patreon.
Yeah.
Because it's forthcoming.
Yep.
Indeed.
What's the scope? What do you guys intend to do with this? What kind of content is going to be on there? Tell the world.
Yeah. So it's called Relic Bearer.
Relic Bearer?
Correct. We're going to be producing maps and lore, dark fantasy settings, stuff that might appear in the Accursed Realm, perhaps be able to be used with some of the upcoming modules that we're planning on. But it is going to be a lot of setting generation. So lots of interesting maps and isometrics and things that will be good for, I think, inspiration, like things that would inspire me is the type of stuff that we want to make.
Sure. Yeah.
Is it going to be you or the primary or the only artist, or is it going to be a team?
It's going to be a team venture. And it's going to start off with Adam doing maps, and I'm going to be doing lore, and then hopefully setting music. I do weird dungeon synthy stuff for myself, but don't share it. But this is something Adam keeps egging me on to do: is make soundtrack elements.
So is it set to launch? Where are you in the process?
It's so close right now. I'm just producing assets now to fill in the blanks. There's like, the weird little things that need to be icons and things like that. That needs to get
tiers
done.
And all that stuff.
All of the major like writing and decisions for how it should work are pretty much locked in. We're just kind of like mulling it over. So maybe that's something we could talk about. I'd love to pick your brain. Actually,
but we could do a whole sub workshop. So, but the general idea is that it's system agnostic RPG content in the setting that you're building.
That's the idea. Yeah. But you should be able to use it really for whatever, like dark fantasy maps and lore. That's the idea.
So do you think will this be like Chris McDowell and Bastion Land, and then Gavin Norman with Old School Essentials? He had a Kickstarter or a Patreon just for his new setting, Dolmenwood. And he actually turned it off because they're going to Kickstarter. But I was like, is this the same kind of idea for you guys? Are you going to be previewing content that will end up in the setting book?
Some of it, yeah.
Likely a lot of crossover. I mean, as we explore with modules to start and everything, elements that, if there's a space in a module, but it can serve as a neutral space for, any dark fantasy setting. This gives us an avenue to share that in that capacity.
Awesome. Well, we should definitely do some collabs.
That sounds great.
Crossover is just right there. Yeah.
That's the way that the Patreon thing worked. I mean, there's a whole server of us that are just creators, and we're like, oh, let's do a collab this month. You do the music and I'll do the map or whatever. Yeah. So let's do that.
Yes.
I want to talk about visuals and aesthetic, because I've been in this industry for very little time. I started in COVID. I've been coming to conventions for a while, and I've been a nerd my whole life, but I've been on the planet for, almost 40 years.
A minute, yeah.
And I feel like there are very, very few companies that take their visual aesthetics like as seriously as you guys do. And I want to talk about like what's the design ethos behind that? Like, what are some of your real world inspirations? Like, what comes to mind, two big things, like the booth, you have these really huge, tall banners that have no products on them. And the Eschaton box, I'll show it here. It has this like kind of black on black art and no pictures of like what's in the game. And I know you guys, I know that these are very like intentional decisions. Talk about that. Tell me about this design world that is Archon Games.
Yeah, it all comes down to story as usual, but it's for us, we want to create relics that people might want to have within their hoard of treasures. So, when we put together a box like Eschaton, we're thinking like, this should be the strange cult object that lives on someone's shelf. Yeah. Because once they're familiar with it, we don't really need it. They know what it is, but it becomes this exciting thing that you get to have. And then, just in regards to the booth, so to describe the booth, we've got a backdrop of Armageddon, which is the main driving card of Eschaton.
Yeah, it's kind of like almost like a hand-painted or hand-drawn city that's burning.
Yeah, just a apocalyptic vibe to it. And when you're in the booth, we just want people to feel like they're getting a feel for the setting. Like we just want people to be a part of it. It's less about like individual like marketing of the items and more about being a part of a bigger world.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age, I mean, everything can be so plasticky. It's like at the end of the day, I mean, this is even something with Velnias that we did with the music. I mean, I, to our detriment, have fought ever having barcodes on the records because I'm like, well, then it's a product, like not even like any deep sense. It's just like beyond the selling point, beyond the cataloging point. Like Adam said, like what purpose does it serve to have a picture of the game components when it's sitting on your shelf? You want this thing to like be looked upon and say, well, what's that? That's interesting because that's the longevity, like of anything you make. I feel like the timelessness, the longevity of it should just be a piece. Sure, it's a product at the front end and that could be amended with stickers or whatever. But it's, I think for our just philosophy in general, it kind of feels weird curating things that are merely aesthetically for sales. And that's to our detriment, maybe sometimes.
It's an art piece. Like, you know, I mean, that's kind of, it also comes from basically a place of only DIY. Right. Where we're like, it's just a screen printed thing. We don't have barcodes. Right. Like it's just, it's
or
this
product pictures.
Handmade wooden box that we've stained and, you know, carved something onto the front of. So we want to maintain that because that's kind of part of the core DNA of the approach is just trying to keep that really arcane feel.
I think you guys have done a great job. You know, when I think back to Origins last year, my core memory, to go back to Inside Out, is like sitting at your guys' booth and playing that game and be like, dude, this is like a whole thing. Like I'm in like a whole thing here. Right. And then we took it back and played it at our hotel, like in the little lobby. And I was like, yeah, this is like, these guys get it, you know? I think that aesthetic is like, just seems really rare to me, and especially in the internet age where it's like,
well, and I think it's also like, I think there's multiple philosophies when you approach making anything. And it's like some people sometimes, which is also valid, look for getting something out and selling as many as they can right away. We're more in it that everything we make is, you know, it's extremely intentional and it's part of a journey. Like this is our life. So, you know, we're not looking like, oh, this one product is it. Everything pivots on that. It's the whole story of everything we've put together and made over time. And that long haul calls for everything being an element that will be a part of that story as the end game pieces come together. And if we make something 20 years online, we should be able to look back at Eschaton from 2016 and say, yeah, of course, like that fits in.
It's a little intimidating though, you know, as a person who does a lot of the illustration and graphic and layout stuff, is I have to be thinking in these really long game terms of like, is this the border style that I'll be happy to live with for the next like 10 years?
I mean, you could also look at it like, if you look at old like Renaissance books, like it changes with the artist.
Right.
Yeah. So it doesn't, you could evolve your style. And then when you look back, like, oh, that's the way it used to be.
Right.
You know?
It's true. It's true.
Don't be too afraid of that.
There is a history as things progress. And
I mean, I see that with my maps already. I'll be like, oh man, I used to do them this way. Now I do them that way. And like,
that's an evolution. Yeah.
And sometimes there are things that were better about how it used to be and other things that are better now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So to play devil's advocate, have you guys considered retail insert that's shrink wrapped?
Yeah. That's the thing that's like about to happen.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's like, as much as I love this, I also want you guys to sell more copies.
Right. Yeah. And having a friend that runs a game store, he's constantly giving us the critique of, you guys, like, you know, it's hard for him as he stocks all these other games to be like, when he's trying to sell at his shop next to, you know, whatever has the pictures. So like I said, a sticker or something that's just on the plastic, but then once it serves its purpose.
Future printings are going to have shrink wrapped inserts just for that purpose. Cause we actually have a wholesale page now. There's a bunch of local game stores that are buying from us directly.
That was my next question.
That's our main thing that we want to support. Like, you know, there's a big community for this now. I mean, that's the thing that, again, we could have never really anticipated when we got into it. It's
25 copies to
it's a
burgeoning world.
So, you know, it's a skill that we've developed over time. So we want to make sure that those people are as successful as as possible.
Sure. And them selling copies is good for everybody.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not just us like with our, you know, our weird convention, you know, tour mechanic, because that's how we used to do it. We like really like we came into this from the weirdest possible angle of saying, let's make board games and just sell them at Gen Con. So like not conventions, but Gen Con. That was like it, you know.
But that was the entry, you know. That is kind of that's the interesting part of our story, is that conventions and that aspect have been the forefront of how we've done everything, you know, up till like a couple years ago. Yeah. And so then it was like, oh, well, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we have to learn and pivot on to make this, you know, have the maximum outreach. And, you know, we're working on all those things like wholesale and all that stuff.
I mean, like Last Origins, you were like, what's the deal with your website? And I was just like, I gotta fix that right now.
I don't even remember that. Is it messed up?
It sent him away into a dark place.
for the band.
For the game company. Yeah.
Because
I thought the same thing for I remember last year I tried to find a tour date and I was like, this band doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, that's also been remedied.
In that time frame.
Yeah, today.
Yeah, thank you, Luke.
It was easy to find. Listen, I'll be honest with you guys. Don't worry.
See, that's great. We love that.
Yeah. As an owner, a business owner, you have to walk both lines. It's
right.
know.
Yeah.
But also that separates, I know so many artists in music and in gaming that just can't get ahead at all because they aren't willing to do those things that you have to.
Right. Yeah.
I think it all comes down to like be willing to do the things that other people might not be able to want to do. It's like just doing those things is sometimes the border between success and not. And like if you can just do it, like you're set.
Well, also I think that you guys are a shining example of like the things that you can learn when you try. Cause like the coins, for example, like this first player marker of the dark one. And I was like, where did you get that? And you're like, I just found a guy on Alibaba and they made them. And it's like, yeah, duh. That's how you get shit made. You just go find a guy to make it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, and I went all out with that. Like I was on ZBrush being like, all right, I'm going to sculpt this, I'm going to have all this stuff like set, and then you're talking to manufacturers and they're like, we want step files, which is a specific type of CAD file that people want for things from time to time. I didn't know this. I mean, despite having done 3D modeling, I studied animation in school. Like I had never done anything for physical production. So it was like a whole separate set of things that you don't know about that you then learn by stumbling through it. You just learn to just accept that you're going to look and sound like an idiot as you just like ask questions because eventually you're going to just know what you're doing. And, the only people who are going to know that, you really had no idea what was going on are those handful of manufacturers that just kind of struggled with your awful questions.
Yeah. Or that won't care.
Yeah. They're not going to remember.
I had a whole thing with VAT. And EU. Because I remember being like, should I charge VAT? And like, no, like let them worry about it. And then like every time I move anything from one place to another, they charge me. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like,
right.
But you don't even know to ask. How do you even know to ask those questions?
Yeah. It's the things that you don't know about that get you always.
Hold fast, wretched sailor. We brace for the broadside barrage.
First RPG system you ever played?
It was a bespoke Dungeons and Dragons variant fantasy tabletop rules.
I think for me, it was West End Star Wars.
Oh, and the D6 one?
Yep.
I love that system. I think
it's really good.
Okay, most recent RPG system that you've played?
Shadow Dark.
Oh, you've played it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. What'd you think?
It's awesome. It's got really good old school vibes.
Yeah.
Really kind of scratches a lot of those itches that I talked about earlier. It's pretty cool.
I'm boring 5e, but I'll say
probably the system that.
Yeah, well, actually, Adam's system, and then whatever. Forbidden Lands. Sorry.
You've played it?
No, but that's my theoretical self.
Okay,
like the most recent one I've delved into that wasn't like the concoction that Adam's been working on.
Great.
Yeah, Adam's
would be. So what have you been playing 5e? Like we're not anti 5e around here.
No, it's just like what was like we
play it at conventions.
At conventions, we have Adam's cousin run sessions for us, and they're kind of like, since we have a big get together of like a group of friends from all over, it's kind of like chaotic delves, and Alex is fantastic at organizing a group.
RPG that you haven't played that you would like to try, and let's go with not Forbidden Lands.
Okay, Shadow Dark sounds extremely interesting. I mean, Adam sent me the PDF to look at and everything, and it looks like it would be a fun delve.
I would call it like it's modern old school roleplay,
right? Which just scratches a lot of itches.
Yeah,
I mean, like I'm excited to try out the new edition of Mothership.
Oh, like, yeah, me too.
So that's like, that's probably like my next, like, let's go with this.
I'm going to chime in with an unusual answer and say mine is Mouse Ritter.
Oh,
because I just got the box set.
That looks cool.
And I just feel like I read so much Redwall growing up. I totally want to like be a little mouse and like, kill
different
cats.
Scale of perception and everything. Yeah.
Favorite metal band crush?
It's like Opeth always.
Opeth
forever. And that's recently rekindled as of like last week.
Nice.
It's like went back hard. They did a remaster, like Abbey Road Studios remasters of all their old records that they just put out not too long ago. Yeah. So like getting to kind of delve back into the records and hear them reproduced in new ways kind of been fun.
Yeah.
Just listen to the production side of things.
I mean, like he just said Opeth, so I just feel like I'm copping out here. But I don't know. I'm like on this like typo negative kick right now, like kind of hard. Like I guess that kick has been going for like a year or 2 years or maybe longer. Not really sure, but yeah.
I'm gonna chime in again here with Meshuggah.
Nice.
I'm like obsessed with Meshuggah.
Dude, I'm sad that you missed you were on tour.
Dude, I had tickets and then they rescheduled it because of COVID, and it was while you were, I had a tour.
It was an immaculate.
Dude, and that guy, like their lighting guy,
yeah.
He was incredible before he started time coding. He would like play like all.
He was the Meshuggah of lighting
he was
guys.
like playing
the Meshuggah of lighting guys.
He was the Meshuggah of lighting guys. Yeah. I would say my other music crush still, I thought it would go away, but it's the Doom 2016 soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
I cannot get enough. I mean, the Eternal one's good, but I can't get enough of that. You guys are 10th level characters in a medieval fantasy setting. What is your class?
I would say Shadow Knight.
Shadow Knight.
Yeah, like necromancer, warrior.
Yeah.
Hybrid.
Wizard. This is my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to get a little bit of that melee in.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when I actually play, I want to be kind of more of when I actually built Limithron as a 5e character, and I had to pick a cleric because I want to smash things with like a light sword.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously. So.
Obviously, it's problems.
You can multi-class. It's fine.
Yeah.
If you had to choose an RPG setting to live in, what would it be?
1990s World of Darkness.
Do you want to live there?
Oh yeah. I mean, can I be a vampire?
Yeah.
Okay, then absolutely.
Yeah, I guess why not, right? Yeah, that's a good answer.
I mean, that's impossibly rough, but I would just go the cop out and say Star Wars because I can.
That's nobody said that yet.
You know, like fly around in a ship and hang out with my friends and just.
Would you be like a smuggler? Like
I think it's like the default, right? In Star Wars world, because then you're like, we got our ship, that's our base. We go do stuff. We get things done. We see places.
What era?
It's hard because like actually living like during the Empire times would be miserable, but
I mean, not if you're a well-paid bounty hunter.
I guess if we're doing like commission work for the Empire.
You just imagine like hanging out with like Bosk and Boba Fett. Like,
yeah, let's go with Empire.
Drinking martinis.
That's like the critical time. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. I like that a lot. Okay, the Dark One has come. What do you do?
I assume that we are his chosen people, so it's time to ascend.
Yeah, we've brought him through the breach. It's time to rend this.
We've take your rightful place at his side.
Yeah, time to rend these mortal confines and shatter this illusion of the construct in which we live. It's time to live our best lives.
Oh man, I love that. Favorite die size?
You know, there's like a lot of hipster answers to this, but I like the D20.
D12. It's an awkward
so
place.
The D12 is like the go-to. I did the Stockholm Cartel was on 4 of them, and all 4 of them, and myself included, all said the D12. You're the first person to say D20.
Yeah, I like
the
it.
10th episode of the show or something.
It's an even system, you know, like you have perfect probability built in, 5% chance for every bit of that roll. It's fun to design around.
It's a great geometric shape.
I thought you were going to go with the D4.
You know, I do.
I'm kind of shocked,
I mean, like, that's the thing is like, I do love a lot of other dice. The D12 is also really cool. I don't know how to design around it, but it is an awesome dice to roll.
Which one, the D12 is?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, like, it's great for like, it's cool. I just haven't figured it out like a really good.
I just use it when I have 12 answers, or if I have 10, I'll push it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So if you're rolling tables, yes.
For tables. Yeah. But using it in a system, it doesn't get used very much in D&D because you have to have a really big weapon.
Right.
Yeah. Great X. And I think that's it.
But if you play One Ring, it gets used all the time.
Really?
It's like the D20. There's no 11 or 12. The 11 is a Gandalf rune, which is like a crit. And then the 12 is a Sauron rune, which is like a crit fail.
Oh, interesting.
Favorite fantasy movie, TV show, or book? We can pivot this into just like your favorite, not franchise, but
setting.
Yeah. I mean, the cop-out's Lord of the Rings, but it's just like, so
I don't think it's like, if you see my Gandalf
staff, I know. But it's just like, it's the genesis of like everything we know and love. And
it's hard to like, stray away from Lord of the Rings. I mean, like just having like the Silmarillion and like poring over it, story, and thinking about.
Okay. Metallica or Megadeth?
I mean, Metallica was what got me to metal. Like that was my genesis, was walking through school parking lot and literally just finding the Master Puppets CD on the ground. And it was like the One Ring, like it's sitting there, and I'm like looking at it as a kid who's, you're like, I can't listen to that. It's heavy metal, but then putting it on and just
you said Master of Puppets,
Puppets. Okay. Yeah. I mean, just like the instrumental interludes and just the heaviness of like the multi-guitar tracking and everything was like, I grew up before that entirely on classical music and movie soundtracks. Okay. So it was like kind of a natural progression just with the epic seal, but long answer, Metallica. Megadeth's fun.
Are you implying that they lost you at some point?
Yeah. I mean, Black Album.
going to say, was it Black Album or Load? Because
Black Album was like kind of just like away from everything that I had grown to love between like when I found then Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All, and then
those first three are.
Yeah, it's just like
for me, Black Album was the album I first started listening to them. So like,
it's a good entry. It's a good entry.
But looking back, I think,
those albums hit hard.
I mean, Metallica, mainly same reason. I mean, we were friends in high school, so he found the One Ring, and
we're just hobbiting around with this thing. Like, it's well beyond our comprehension as children, but like the scale of it shaped so much of my life. Then I'm like, well, heavy guitars are the answer. Like,
favorite libation or beverage during your RPG sessions?
Coffee
as well.
Video or computer game you've logged the most hours playing?
Oh, God.
It's EverQuest, easily. Yeah, easily.
It's also going to be EverQuest. We were broken children.
Do you have a favorite D&D spell?
Speak with Dead.
Favorite uses or memories of using it?
Any kind of utility or problem solving spell, I get a lot of love out of. And I feel like Speak with Dead is one of those that gets a lot of utility from me, because you go into a room and then there's like some people who have died, like other adventurers, and like that's how you can get the story, because you might not be able to get it otherwise. So I like delving into that. Well,
and you can always juice your GM to make them really work hard.
Yep.
Like, oh crap, I did not know they were going to talk to this skeleton.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I'm always at risk, because like, I had a bard that was like Speak with Dead, Detect Thoughts. It was only utility spells, just to like try to get more information out of the game.
I might have mentioned this before on the show, but I have a player, Scott. He always takes Speak with Animals just to get me to do as many animal voices as I can.
Meta abuse.
Do you have a favorite or favorites, favorite board games?
Overall, I would say Eclipse.
I haven't played. I've heard good things.
New Dawn for the Galaxy.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just really satisfying. It's a long, winding strategy where you're building, a civilization in space. So you're developing tech, you're exploring. And I just find there's a lot of really good, interesting decision making.
Yeah.
The narrative that unfolds throughout the course of an evening is really good. And you can spend 6 hours playing it and be totally satisfied from indulging.
There's so many good choices. Honestly, I love playing Eclipse with this guy for sure. I mean, like that's just an awesome, like, as far as like strategy games go, that one scratches like a lot of itches.
Yeah.
Tastes change over time. I have enjoyed playing the deck building game Moonrakers.
Okay.
That's a game where it's all about a heist, essentially. So you are all individual leaders of gangs, and you have to essentially work together to like perform a heist, and you can kind of betray each other along the way. So you say, oh, I've got these types of cards in my hand. We need this much firepower. We need this much muscle, or like this much tech to get through. Who wants in on this mission with me? I'll split the proceeds, 50-50, or I get this and you get this other bonus from it. So I like those politicking type of games. I mean, I guess in that vein, I love Avalon.
Oh, yeah.
I love Avalon. I love sitting on a table and just
Adam is always,
it's a good time.
Nice.
Another one that was surprised, I don't know if you care, but a recent one, Return to Dark Tower.
Return to Dark Tower.
Surprisingly good. Like I thought it'd be sold as a gimmick, but it's run by an app, which makes it really easy to access if you haven't played it for a while. And then the group narrative is just really satisfying as it unfolds. There's a lot of good choices. Good
I saw a bunch last year. Convention
I would highly recommend it.
Nice.
Even really good. Cooperative too.
Cooperative is just fun.
Really, I love cooperative games where possible. Obviously, because we're doing Iconoclasm.
But just shared story where everyone's having a similar experience. You can walk away and be like, oh, remember we did this and that, rather than everyone being like, well, yeah, but then you stomped on me and you crushed that and I just had to sit out for 3 hours. It's like
upcoming Kickstarter projects or games you're looking forward to, maybe ones we haven't mentioned.
I mean, looking forward to actually getting the stuff from Shadow Dark, looking forward to getting the Mothership stuff.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to whenever Kingdom Death finishes, getting whatever they've got left over that I'm still waiting for.
Are you guys at all excited about Lorcana?
I've looked a little bit at it. It looks cool.
All right, guys. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we wrap up?
This has been awesome.
Yes, it's been great.
This has been fun.
Thanks for having us.
Where can people find you guys on the interwebs?
ArchonGames.net is the source of all things.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll find the link for the Kickstarter.
That's right.
For posterity, I will put the Kickstarter link in the show notes if it's in the near future. But I have this feeling this will come out before you guys go live.
Cool. Yeah.
And what conventions are you at this year?
We still have, Origins is the next one. Denver Fan Expo after that. Then Gen Con. Then or Tacticon.
Tacticon after that.
Tacticon after that.
That's here, right?
Yep, that's here.
That's the same people who did Genghis.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the Ship of the Dead, and it's time for the outro. You've been listening to the Ship of the Dead podcast. Email your questions, comments, and buried treasure tips to shipofthedead@limithron.com. You can support the program, join our Discord server, get early access to new episodes, and instantly download hundreds of battle maps, assets, and adventures at limithron.com/Patreon. Tiers start as low as $2 a release, and you only get charged when I make something new. Pirate Borg, my rules-light, rum-infested hack of Morkborg, is available for pre-order at pirateborg.com. Ship of the Dead is produced by Limithron LLC, our audio editor is Matt Keppler, and our music is by Alexander Miller.